National Weather Service in Chicago has issued a tornado warning for central Will County in northeastern Illinois until 7:30 p.m. At 6:53 p.m., a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located near Manhattan, or 8 miles west of Utah, moving northeast at 25 miles per hour.
We begin tonight on the Weather Watch. Take a look at that. A tornado touches down in Manhattan in Will County. A storm chaser caught it all on camera tonight. Reports of damage, and of course, the sight rattles residents.
Oh, my turn.
Safe where the structure falls.
Northern Illinois is no stranger to tornadoes. A number of large and devastating tornadoes have hit the Chicagoland area since recorded weather history, dating back all the way to the 1800s. Most notably, Palm Sunday EF4 tornado on March 28, 1920, which started in Shanahan, Illinois and went 53 miles all the way to Wilmette, Illinois, killing a total of 20 and injuring over 300. On March 1961, an EF2 tornado touched down in Chicago. 1 person was killed and 115 injured.
A fast-moving tornado strikes Chicago's south side, leaving 1 dead and more than 90 injured. Blasting in late in the day, driving northeast towards Lake Michigan, it devastated a 5-block area, skipped a mile, and then battered a section near the University of Chicago Midway.
On April 21, 1967, 2 major EF4 tornadoes hit northern Illinois. The first hit Belvedere and Woodstock area, killing 24 people and injuring over 500, and the famous Oak Lawn tornado, killing 33 people and over 500 injuries. The tornado traveled over 16 miles and caused over $50 million in damage. On June 13, 1976, Lamont was hit by an EF4 tornado, killing 2 people and injuring 23. Causing over $13 million in damage. On August 28, 1990, the largest recorded tornado in the Chicagoland area, an EF5, destroyed Plainfield, Illinois, killing 29 people and injuring 353 people. On April 20, 2004, an EF3 tornado hit Utica, killing 9 people. And most recently, on November 17, 2013, an EF4 tornado hit the town of Washington, Illinois, which was the most costliest tornado in Illinois' history. The tornado went from Washington through Diamond, Coal City, Wilmington, Manhattan, and finally Frankfort, costing over $1 billion in damage. Since 1950, 228 tornado-related deaths have been recorded in the state of Illinois. The great majority of the deaths have occurred in the month of April. The most frequent time of day for tornadoes to hit are between 12 noon and 8 p.m. 66% of those tornadoes have hit in the months of April through June. Even though the technology has greatly improved over the years, tornadoes can still hit with little or no warning, and that is why it's important to prepare and be ready. It is not a question of if, but when the next tornado will hit. Are you ready?
The National Weather Service actually was created in the late 1800s, around 1870, and it was in response to shipwrecks on the Great Lakes. And the first office in the National Weather Service was here in Chicago, and that was in response to requests from all the mariners to please get some weather information and help us to actually be able to complete our voyages safely up and down across the Great Lakes. So that was the reason that we originally were created, and it's still a service that we provide today. Severe Weather Preparedness Week is the first full week of March in Illinois this year, and it's a time for people to review their severe weather preparedness, make sure that they understand how to get the information that could be potentially life-saving as soon as the National Weather Service provides it. That would include tornado watches, severe thunderstorm watches, and even more importantly, the warnings that sometimes will follow the watches. They need to understand how to get that information and then what to do when they receive that information. If there's a tornado warning, they need to be able to seek shelter quickly, ideally underground, but if not, in an interior room of your structure, putting as many walls between you and the outside as possible. So it's just a time to rethink how you would respond if there is severe weather in your area. If you are observing severe weather, there are actually numerous ways to get the information to the National Weather Service. We have a website where you can go and you can submit reports. We have a, of course, direct line to a lot of local dispatchers. So if you call your local 911, if there's a tornado especially, we would like you to call 911, report that tornado and ask them to relay that report to the National Weather Service. There are social media options, but Twitter or Facebook, that's not necessarily going to be the first place that we're going to look for that report, but it's a great way to follow up with documentation in terms of whatever damage you're observing or photos of the event itself. A watch will be issued for either the expectation of severe thunderstorms or potentially for a tornado. So we would issue either a severe thunderstorm watch or a tornado watch. That would be for storms that would be expected to produce hail roughly an inch diameter or larger, or damaging winds, or in the case of a tornado watch, of course, tornadoes. Now, we issue the watches based on the atmosphere becoming more favorable for that type of weather. We can look at the instability in the atmosphere, we can look at how the winds are turning with height, we can look at the strength of the winds, we can look at the way the moisture is being pushed through the atmosphere, and those factors together can help us understand that a situation is developing that could potentially be life-threatening later in the day. A warning, in contrast, means that severe weather is occurring, or very soon will be occurring. So the watch comes first. In most cases, we try to have the watch out a couple hours ahead of time, and then the warning would be issued a few minutes before the event occurs. We try to have, ideally, 15 minutes of lead time on tornado warning or severe thunderstorm warning. It's not always going to be that much time. Sometimes it's actually going to be maybe 30 or 45 minutes. It just kind of depends on the situation. But a warning means you need to take action right now, and a watch means you need to be prepared to take action potentially later in the day. The peak of tornado season in Illinois is during the springtime. Anywhere from April through June is when we see a lot of our activity. And there's also sometimes a secondary peak in the fall. We can see maybe October, November. It can be very quiet in the fall, but we've also had some pretty significant tornadoes in the fall. But I would really say, any month of the year can see tornadoes. We've seen tornadoes in January, we've seen tornadoes in November in recent years. But really, it's the spring is the primary time of year, and that's why we have Severe Weather Awareness Week during the spring. Supercell Thunderstorm is a storm that has managed to separate the warm, buoyant inflow air from the cool outflow rain shaft. So what that allows the storm to do is maintain itself for a long period of time and potentially grow very intense. So a typical storm that is not a supercell might just go up like a bubble of warm air, and then as it starts to precipitate, the precipitation rains down on the inflow and just pretty much starves the storm of what it needs to survive. A supercell manages to separate those two processes, so it manages to continue to receive the strong warm inflow at the same time it's raining very heavily. It achieves that through basically tilting of the storm updraft, and so the inflow is occurring in a different location than the outflow, and the winds throughout the depth of the atmosphere have turned the storm so that those two processes can actually occur independently. And that's also the The rotation that occurs in a supercell is very closely associated with severe weather, both in terms of supporting the growth of large hail, as well as damaging winds, and sometimes even tornadoes. A tornado is going to be favorable in an environment where you have a lot of buoyancy. That would mean a lot of instability, a lot of strong updraft potential in a storm that could cause a storm to grow very tall very rapidly. And the other factor is turning of the winds throughout the atmosphere. It's called wind shear. The winds at the surface may be coming from a southerly direction or maybe even southeasterly, while the winds maybe 20,000 feet up are coming from the west. And so the different wind directions at different heights allow that thunderstorm to start spinning. And the spinning and the stretching of that storm and the updraft in that storm is what supports the rotation and the development of a tornado. The weather spotters that we work with are volunteers who have become a little bit more weather aware and weather savvy through multiple training opportunities that we provide, and they are basically the eyes and the ears on the ground. The radar that we have is incredibly powerful. It's a dual polarization Doppler radar, which allows us to understand a lot more about what's happening in the storms than we ever could in the past, but it still is not going to tell us exactly what's happening on the ground in most cases. So we rely on the spotters to confirm the information that we're seeing on the radar. The radar can give us a hint that there's a circulation that could be tornadic, or there's some damaging wind possibility, or maybe some large hail, but it is the spotters on the ground that actually confirm that the event is occurring and can validate, verify the warnings that we've issued, or even perhaps prompt a warning to be issued in some cases. The Weather Ready Nation program, of which the Manhattan Weather Channel is one of our ambassadors, it's an effort to basically promote the idea that weather information provided by the National Weather Service in terms of outlooks, watches, warnings, are not of any value at all if people do not respond appropriately. And we can issue a warning, but if people don't receive the warning and then take the appropriate response, it's not going to have the life-saving capability that we hope for. So the Weather Ready Nation Ambassador Program is a way to basically connect the users of our information more closely with the National Weather Service. And so we work with local partners in the communities around our area to promote the information that we provide, to train people on how to respond appropriately, and also to actually just find the information to begin with. So it's a really vital partnership that we have, and we are very thankful for the ambassadors who are willing to be part of that program. Operations area here in the National Weather Service office in Chicago is similar to those of other weather offices around the country. There's about 122 offices across the country just like this one, and we provide forecasts, watches, warnings, advisories for around 10 million people in 23 counties across northern Illinois and northwest Indiana. We also provide aviation forecasts for Midway and O'Hare, as well as marine forecast on Lake Michigan. And we provide that here in the operations area. We have 2 forecasters on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they can look at satellite information, radar information, output from different computer forecast models, and they can combine all of that into the forecast information that they then provide to the public and the other various users that we work with. If people would like to get more information about the National Weather Service, the website is www.weather.gov. That's weather.gov. And we also have a Facebook page, U.S. National Weather Service Chicago, as well as a Twitter feed. So lots of different ways to get our information, and certainly we encourage that as we get into the severe weather season.